COVID. But it's really interesting to get their perspective.
One of
We go live.
Go live. Okay, hello everybody. How are you? Anything new in your lives? Well, this is our second official press conference, as we had determined previously. And a lot has happened in the past week, more that's happened in the country in the past month, I think. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, especially around the GoFundMe and alternatives for funding that have occurred. There's quite a bit of updates with that. I guess what we'll say first is, obviously, we know GoFundMe has pulled the funding and has been put under some very serious pressure. And as a result, they've just decided they're going to refund everybody who donated to the campaign. All 170,000 people are going to be getting donations. Let's say getting their donations refunded to them. In the first day that we set up the alternative on Give, Send, Go to replace GoFundMe, it hit $1.5 million in the first day. Sorry, under 24 hours. I think it's closer to $2 million now. We've also had a lot of people in the Bitcoin community, which is new to a lot of you here. And the latest note I just got on a multi-sig wallet, which it's not really all that important. There's $300,000 just in that account in Bitcoin alone, as well as many other alternative wallets that people have just created a wallet, posted online, say, throw your money here, and we're going to give it to the Freedom Convoy. So a lot of people have been very concerned over the censorship, but I think we have it under control. Our trajectory now is even better than it was with GoFundMe, but we'll talk about that more as you have any questions. I think that's it for now on my end. We have Keith here, who is our legal representative, so if you have any questions for him directly, he's here to answer your questions. So yeah, let's start. What do you guys want to know?
Lincoln J with Rebel. Now, have you guys considered taking any legal action towards the issue with the money being seized from GoFundMe? Is that in consideration at all? Are you able to comment on that?
Sure. Given that the marketplace has spoken and people have lost faith in GoFundMe, given that GoFundMe is going to be on its own initiative returning the money to the donors who are supportive of the truckers' efforts for freedom, it would just be a waste of time to sue them. We don't need to sue them. We're focused on moving forward and supporting the efforts of so many Canadians who are concerned about what's happening with the government.
Now, has GoFundMe reached out to you guys at all? Have you heard from any representative from GoFundMe?
No.
We just got an alert and a notice on our file saying thank you, but no thanks. We are going to terminate your campaign. And initially what they said was they were going to terminate it, and anybody who doesn't request a refund, those monies will be held for them to do with as they please. And they suggested we're likely going to donate it to a charity of choice. And it was pressure from the competitor, Give, Send, Go, who issued a strategy for some of the donors. And you now see Ron DeSantis and the Attorney General of Florida, and now a number of other states have decided they want a public inquiry into GoFundMe. So I think that over time is going to work itself out. But we had no notice. I mean, you were in contact with them over the phone. There was communication that seemed to be okay. But the Mayor Watson put publicly on Twitter an announcement saying thank you to GoFundMe for working with us to ensure that this campaign was, I can't remember the verbiage he used, but that it was shut down. So it's clearly direct interference from the government to cancel this campaign, and we should all be very, very worried about that, in my humble opinion.
And to be clear, we received the email notifying us that they were effectively canceling the campaign and seizing people's hard-earned dollars that had donated to the truckers and we're going to divert them to a charity of their choice unless people went through a refund process. They sent us that email simultaneously with posting it on the GoFundMe account. So we found out when the world found out. There was no prior warning. And we provided extensive legal documentation, written correspondence from me to address all of the issues they raised. In their announcement, they talked about information and their collaboration with the Ottawa Police Service, and the Ottawa Police Service issued a tweet congratulating and praising GoFundMe for being responsive and taking down these donations.
Just may you please talk loudly?
Sure, we're not speaking loudly enough.
No.
So the Ottawa Police released a statement stating that they were going to be arresting anybody that's bringing supplies to the truckers, right? Has anyone from the Ottawa Police reached out to you guys and give you guys any details on that? Have you heard any word about that happening as of yet?
Not as far as I know.
Chris has been in contact with them, but he's not here, unfortunately. So I can't.
Yeah, the folks that run the Operations Center are aware of it. It's going to be acted upon this evening. We're going to try and stay within the law, but they're also going to challenge it to see if this is even legal. Can the police chief or the mayor actually order that sort of thing? And just by way of context, a bit of background, it's worth noting that with the Prime Minister having essentially disappeared from the scene, Mayor Watson has been effectively left in charge of the operation. His strategy, as far as we can assess, is to starve out the convoy in every way possible, i.e. money, fuel, food, medicine, that sort of stuff. And to us, this is just one more little incremental step in a battle which he's been losing.
And something interesting, we had an event this morning, the stage at the main stage area. And when I had to go up there, since I just did this, because Mayor Watson doesn't believe in salting his sidewalks, the police stopped us 3 blocks away from the stage, and despite us trying to talk to the police and allow us to have the shuttle drive me to the stage, the police said absolutely no. So I had a team that helped carry me to 3 blocks to the stage. But it wasn't Ottawa Police, it was OPP, which I thought very interesting. So we do have a number of police services around the area: Peel Police, Toronto Police, OPP, Ottawa. It's interesting. I just thought it was, I don't know what it means specifically. I just thought it was very odd that perhaps because the Ottawa Police have a sense of community, and because of that, people know who they are, this is where they live, these are their friends and family, so they needed to put OPP officers there. I have no idea, but just very strange what's going on.
If you could just reiterate one more time, so can you just go over again, so the legal, if you guys are taking any legal action towards GoFundMe?
Not at this time.
Has anyone from the federal government, provincial government, anyone like that reached out to you guys? Any communication whatsoever? Or?
Behind the scenes, not in the governing party, but in the opposition party, we've had people make overtures and reach out to us. And we're open to talking to anybody, obviously. It hasn't materialized into any formal conversation and meeting yet. It may. But it seems to be there is some will. They're just figuring out a strategy to connect with us. And I do imagine that the Liberal Party is doing the same, because there seems to be a divide splitting up, at least from our sources inside the Liberal Party, that there seems to be a divide. And people are very frustrated. Elected MPs in the Liberal Party are quite embarrassed that they're the center stage of a controversy where the Prime Minister runs and hides and calls us all names like a 5-year-old.
Harrison Faulkner for True North. Have you been in contact with any members from the Conservative Party of Canada?
In an official capacity, as I just indicated, not in any official capacity, but I'll leave it there.
If I may ask, I'm also with True North. If Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or somebody from the government reaches out to negotiation, you be willing to negotiate a deal where you maybe don't get everything you want, but you get some things you want, maybe like the trucker vaccine mandate lifted, or maybe a test or vaccine option? Would you be willing to negotiate something with the Prime Minister or the government?
Well, the first thing is they need to call. So we'll evaluate that when they pick up the phone and call us and say, we want to talk. I would assume that all politicians, all political parties, they want to figure out how to reverse this, end this situation in a way that it's safe for everybody, and they don't come off looking in such a bad light, right? And we're sympathetic to that. We understand that. We get that. We know how politics works. But the first thing they got to do is call us. So we're sitting there. We're waiting by the phone.
Tamara, is there any concern that you might have the same issue with Give Send Go as you've had with GoFundMe?
Not that I'm aware of, no. We've chatted, our accountant's been dealing with them, and they seem really good. They run it a little bit differently, and so yeah, there's no concern there on my part. Yeah.
We've put in place, and they offered it, extensive written legal assurances that under no circumstances would they withhold the donations made by those who support the efforts of the Truckers for Freedom. And we're very comfortable that the monies are going to flow to the truckers and in support of their efforts to cause the government to drop these restrictions on charter rights.
And in addition to that, I received an email a couple of hours ago from Dave Rubin from the Rubin Report, connecting me with his executive team to build a platform on locals as well. And they want to help us, them and Rubble want to help us fundraise and ensure that we don't have any issues with any sort of censorship in the future. So I'm going to be having a meeting with them tonight, and that will be an additional place where people will be able to donate for a cause.
Are you able to comment on the surge and contain strategy also that the Ottawa police said that they would be implementing the other day? Because by the looks of it outside, it doesn't look like anything's changed.
I think I'm going to ask Tom to respond, but I just would leave it up to. I think a lot of this has been a lot of bluff trying to to be antagonistic towards the truckers to get them angry. And everybody knows this has turned out just to be the biggest party, the most friendly atmosphere of a gathering of people in Ottawa's history. Like, it's amazing. So it's shocking, quite frankly, some of the language some of the elected officials in Ottawa have been using. I can't believe it. But that's their issue. We're here just trying to be positive, and we're just waiting for the government. Tom?
Now, I think in terms of an actual strategy, as a intelligence officer who served in a variety of environments, I would say the opposition to this point doesn't actually have a strategy. They have a sort of weak goal that they want the streets cleared, but they have no real idea on how they want to get there. Also, the CEO, the boss of the opposition, Prime Minister Trudeau, has disappeared and left them leaderless, which makes it difficult for them as well. So it's specific reference to your surge and contain strategy. It's very clear that Mayor Watson wants us starved out, hence the cutting off the water, cutting off the fuel, cutting off the food, cutting off access. And they're starting to put more pressure on by handing out tickets and doing this sort of thing. They're trying to create an atmosphere of fear to scare everyone to get them to go away. I think where their surge and contain strategy is failing is folks realize that Mayor Watson is, I mean, I don't want to be insulting, but he's a kind of a puppet for Trudeau. The two of them are tied close together. They're tangled up in the same SNC Lavalin scandals through, multi-billion-dollar problem here in Ottawa with our LRT, et cetera. And yeah, there just isn't a strategy. So what you're seeing is a whole series of disconnected tactics. So as somebody who's used to sort of facing opposition coming at you, you sort of look and say, okay, is this coordinated opposition where they hit you here, hit you there, and you say, wow, I'm hurting? Or are you looking at it and going, wow, what are these guys doing? They're all over the place. They don't have a strategy. And I think that's where we're at. So the surge and contain thing is a tactic. It's failing, I would assess. It's going to get people more upset, and it's going to help us. So yeah, anyway, that's my kind of immediate thoughts on that.
If I may as well.
Yeah.
So since early last week, when I got set up in the volunteer coordination center, I've been in constant communication with police liaisons from the Ottawa Police, RCMP, OPP, and the PPS, the Parliamentary Protective Service. we've been completely open in sharing information about anything that could be public safety or security related. So I was surprised by the chief's most recent statement. It was strong language. I'm also cautiously optimistic that it's more of a, I won't say bluff tactic, but a pressure tactic. But when I see the disconnect between what's happening on the ground from what you're hearing in the leadership level,
100%.
that's a common theme in law enforcement. The top says one thing, the ground, that's not reflective of the ground level. That's my experience in the RCMP anyway. When you talk to most of these police officers on the ground, like, the war has been good. My relationship with the liaisons has been great. Like, it's very open and transparent, and we're trying to help each other every day make sure that this stays peaceful. Because my primary concern has always been the individual or small group bad actors that are going to try and bring tarnish the reputation of what we're trying to accomplish here. And they know that. The police all know that. They all know that this group, like at the ground level, they all know that this group is here for everybody. And I make a point of saying that to other police officers when I see them. It's like, just so you know, in my mind and in my heart, we're doing this for all of you as well. Yeah. And, you know, and they speak about, I mean, the big scary term that I've heard that most people are kind of getting into a panic about is labeling us terrorists and we're holding the city hostage. And like, that's, to me, that's laughable. Like, the last 8 years of my career, I was on a full-time tactical unit. And for the last, right here in the city, I've been on Parliament Hill and all of these buildings countless times for these major events. You know, Canada Day being the big token one almost every year. And when you go downtown here right now, the atmosphere that you're going to see, I've never seen people so joyful, right? Then Canada Day doesn't hold a candle compared to this, right? People of every background, complete strangers, just dancing in the streets, coming up and hugging each other and like cheering for freedom. That's what gets families with kids, terrorists. There's bouncy castles out there. People walking around with their families, kids in tow. Every time I see them, are you having fun? Yeah, right? Like,
Just can I follow with the terrorist thing? Just by way of background, I'm ex-military intelligence. I also worked for the RCMP for 6 years in national security, the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team. I'm one of the few court experts in the country on terrorism, and I'm a declared court expert both in criminal court, which is to say Ontario Superior Court, as well as federal court. And I've testified both on behalf of the RCMP against an Al-Qaeda-inspired terrorist plot that was operating partly out of Ottawa. And just for the Islamophobes out there, I've also testified a couple of times in court on behalf of Muslims who have been wrongly accused of being terrorists when in fact they were guilty of DWI, driving while Islamic. So if we smell a terrorist, if we see the hint of a terrorist, if I see two words together, which to me connect towards political violence, the first call we have is to the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team of the RCMP. Second call goes to the Ottawa Police Intelligence Section. We have got no information, nowhere, nothing of anybody operating within our ranks or even around us who has the intention to carry out an act of political violence, i.e. terrorism.
Well, I actually know the officer in charge of the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team here in Ottawa. We have a great relationship, or in the past we did anyway. I've met with him multiple times over the last roughly 4 years of my time at the team here in Ottawa. I was leading an initiative to go around to senior managers of the RCMP and different units to try and convince them that the best utilization of my team here in Ottawa, instead of spending majority of our time doing protective operations, was to become a designated national counter-terrorist hostage rescue team. So when I hear those comments about we're taking the city hostage and we're terrorists, it's like I've spent the last 4 years of my career trying to convince the RCMP to make my team what the FBI hostage rescue team is in the United States. And we had a little bit of traction with it because they actually sent me to Quantico, Virginia, and I got to train with the FBI hostage rescue team for a week. So if there was any hint of any kind of legitimacy to this notion that we're terrorists, we would have nothing to do with that, obviously. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion.
We're also seeing some articles online stating that tow truck companies around the city of Ottawa are denying service requested by the government. Are you guys able to comment on that? Do you have any more details on that?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. The short answer is tow truck companies right across the country in Alberta, Ontario, whatever, have either politely refused requests from the government to assist or not so quite politely refused requests for assistance. We had a gentleman call us up from Buffalo, New York. He's got a big Class A truck dealership just outside of Buffalo. He's also got a series of highway records, which I think are like Class A tow trucks that can tow like super heavy loads. And he gets a phone call in his office, and it's hi, it's the federal government calling. You guys have highway tractors that, highway tow trucks. And he said, yeah, I do. Can you bring them up to Canada? And he was like, why would I do that? What's going on? And they said, well, it's that thing in Ottawa. And of course, he knew exactly what was going on. So we politely told him that he couldn't do operations in Canada for insurance reasons. But what it shows is the federal government in Ottawa is reaching all the way down to Buffalo, New York, trying to find a tow truck, and they can't get one. Because the trucking industry is somewhat of a brotherhood, much like the military, much like the police. And we do kind of all know each other. And no tow truck company that wants to be in business for more than a week after this is going to help out. So, like I said, they're reaching all the way to Buffalo, New York, trying to scrounge up tow trucks. So what's actually happening now, we have a network of tow truck operators who are talking to each other to see who's being called and who's not. Short answer, they're having a hard time getting tow trucks.
Hi, Beth Gage, post-millennial. Last week, he said the Conservatives would be wise to remove Aaron O'Toole as leader and install someone like Pierre Poilievre as leader. Since then, O'Toole has been removed, and just yesterday, Pierre announced his intention to run for leader. Do you think the Convoy is having an effect on the Conservative Party and its current climate?
I was, in a trolly way, running the hashtag nothing to do with truckers. Because there were people putting out in the, we'll call it the legacy media, saying that policy officials are looking at change, but it has nothing to do with truckers. Is it exclusively us? I don't think so. I think the will was there, but I think we might have just pushed everything over the edge. And there are a lot of people, beyond us, on the ground that have been very upset with the direction of the industry as well was a problem. And this has been the opportunity to reverse course. I think they realized that they need to go back to their core values. And I urge the to do the same thing. Conservatives got to be conservative, and liberals got to be liberal. They got to abandon this cult-like practice of doing with the progressive. So to answer your question, I don't think it's exclusively us. I think we all saw the writing was on the wall, and but we're hopeful that change is on the horizon.
Any residents of Ottawa, what you're doing on mainstream media, specifically the negative side of it?
We were served with an injunction application on behalf of a lawyer, personal injury lawyer, representing a person in the downtown, a resident, and I had an emergency application on Saturday afternoon. Lawyer chose to send us hundreds of pages of complex legal documents within the hour before the application. The judge agreed that it would be improper for that application to proceed, it would be unfair to our side. That has been rescheduled to tomorrow afternoon at 1. In preparation for responding to the injunction application, particularly an inappropriate level of impact to residents in the downtown, we have had a report I received, which was early this morning, over 110 residents of this community that have come forward and wanted to swear and have sworn after data to be used in the proceeding to demonstrate and express their views that how well paid the truckers have been, how they've been on sidewalks, how it's a festive environment, and how important it is to them that truckers are here to show concern about the loss of freedoms and efforts to get them back. So it's overwhelming that these people who are usually reluctant to come forward and share a legal affidavit in the court proceeding on their own initiative. So it's been quite remarkable.
Just to touch on what my friend here said, so there's been no indication that making any that the Convoy movement is making any progress towards the ultimate goal. Is there anything we can comment on that?
Well, I think it was 2 days ago that the health official, I think it was the BC health official, to reevaluate the mandates and the passports. Was that in Ontario as well?
Dr.
It was Ontario as well.
Yeah.
It's been happening over. I mean, it's little increments. You know, particulars of how people respond to it. So I think you are seeing people within the political sphere realizing that wait, they swung public opinion 40% in one poll in a week. Perhaps we should pay attention to this. So I think it's just going to take a little time for them to catch up. But
Yeah, we've also seen, I mean, Premier Legault of Quebec backed away from his vax tax, which I was quite surprised with, and he says he'll communicate. Premier Moe of Saskatchewan is sort of waffling and twisting, and he's kind of moving back, and I would say I think he's doing the right thing. Premier Kenny of Alberta's had a rough week. And he's been called out by his own RCMP for putting out false statements, etc. And I think you see Premier Kenny is now starting to backpedal, and rumors coming out of health officials in BC that they're backpedaling. And we've seen some federal health officials, you may have seen that headline in the Post that said, you know, they're considering getting rid of the mandates. Practice has nothing to do with the truckers. So I would say that what we have done is we've sort of hit the capital. The shockwaves have gone across the province, and you can feel it vibrating out across the country. Also, you're aware that the federal government told its employees last weekend, oh, don't come to work on Monday, there'll be all those truckers, but Tuesday it will be cleanup day, the truckers will be gone, and then everything's back to normal. And of course, here we are a week later. So I think if you're looking for signs of real progress, watch tomorrow morning when all the officials, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the advisors, the lobbyists, the mayors, the wake up and
The large parts of notice police, you know, during a week, during police, status of their presence. Do you guys have any update on whether they're going to leave or
no indication when they're going to leave, because I don't think they know when they're going to leave. I don't think they know when they're going to leave. We've been having fun putting out pictures of gangs of police standing there. I feel bad for them. It's like 12 guys from Durham region. They're all sitting there kind of looking around talking, and then they walk into the block, and then they talk some more. We put up multiple pictures of these guys standing there. So the city of Ottawa is complaining about the extraordinary cost of the policing. It's like we've got hundreds of guys standing there doing nothing. So yeah, the police are here. We don't mind it. We think it's great. We're encouraging people. If you see a police officer standing there, go over and say hello. That's not a badge in a uniform. That's an actual human being standing there. That's so right. Go back to them. Find out where they're going. I spent about 4 hours this week handing out data and on high intelligence officer helping out. And I would say at the front line, we are 90 to 95% super positive. We took a little social visit out to the airport yesterday afternoon with a certain number of trucks, just for a little exercise of freedom of movement, just a social call to the airport to say hello. And I can tell you the first Ottawa police officer who talked to us, I could see his face. He was just like, oh my God, please do not tell me you're coming here. And he said, you know, you have to understand it's a tough situation. I said, no, just a little exercise, a little social call, having a bit of fun. Good. And then, we got 3 more cop cars following us up to the airport. But even though that guy was under a huge amount of pressure, he's getting from his boss, like, what the heck are those guys doing at the airport? Super polite, super professional, no problem. So, hello to a cop. Go to the truckers to help out there. If you cop on the street, go say hello.
I think this is a question letter saying that, truckers, I'm hearing that some of you believe you have legal representation. That's wrong. He goes into court, he's only acting for the leaders, Dictor, and you should contact the lawyer now about the legal risk and then offer to settle. What do you have to say to that? Are the truckers on their own as far as legal representation is concerned? And just your thoughts.
What's happening here and what we're witnessing, not just here, but in Toronto and other places around Canada and indeed the United States and that around the world, this is an organic freedom movement. This is not a coordinated, orchestrated event. We have no idea who most of these truckers are and where they came from and how long they're staying. Some come today, leave tomorrow. There's a constant movement. There's far more Canadians arriving and driving through the streets with signs and Canadian flags and freedom slogans, and then there are even big trucks. It's really remarkable. The notion that any one lawyer or any one firm could somehow magically represent the thousands and thousands and probably tens of thousands of Canadians who are concerned about the loss of their freedoms and government overreach is obviously impossible. My clients are the three initial organizers that just met one another and came together organically. They didn't pre-plan anything, as well as the new not-for-profit corporation that has been established in accordance with all the accounting and legal requirements to help disperse the donations in support of the truckers and their expenses. So that's the only people I represent, and I've tried to make that clear. We have lots of other kind of ad hoc groups here and there. Any trucker who is concerned about where they stand legally should get legal advice. The class action lawsuit that's been filed, I don't do personal injury law and I don't do class action lawsuits, and we all know those kind of lawyers out there. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
Just a quick question for either one of you here. Why don't you just come out and distance yourself from Pat King, from the likes of Pat King, because he seems to pop up every now and then. And I was speaking to your PR person earlier, just on our way here, and she said that she'd spoken to you and that there's some agreement here that you might want to put out a statement aggressively, perhaps. So this is a question because I met you guys last weekend and you were very clear that he's doing his own thing and he was part of this early on, but you've distanced yourselves from him. I'm just wondering, why don't you just come out and just say we have nothing to do with him? This is hold us accountable, not Pat King.
Right. Yeah.
Yesterday or 2 days ago, I did an interview on RT, and I addressed that very issue.
Okay.
They asked me about Pat King and a couple of other people. I explained that, look, because this is so organic, there are many people in different groups that have latched onto the movement. And as I said, anybody who behaves and understand that it's a positive environment and this is about unity and family, whatever, they're more than welcome. But you can't police people's behavior, at least we can't. We're doing our best. We're trying to keep people at bay like that.
It's just that he's been saying that he's a very important part of this movement. He's one of the initial organizers, and that's
well, he can say a lot of things, and he can. We believe in freedom of speech, and that's his right. But we have a non-for-profit corporation with a board of directors. We have a team. There's that command center of people that have been putting all the band-aids on and restructuring everything this week. And those are the people who have put this whole thing together. There's a lot of them, a lot of people. I just met some of them an hour ago that I was unaware of where they were doing. They were unaware of what I was doing. So I think that's how massive this thing has become. And the fact that there's, a few people on the side who are rabble rousers and want to make this about them. And we issued a statement at the very beginning about this individual who I've never met.
Okay.
I mean, we're doing our best to explain that that's not representative of our convoy. And I think, what was it, the third or fourth day when you left? We had a conversation and I said, just send him home. And they tried.
Okay,
And he agreed. He said he was going to go home.
Mhm.
And then he got in his truck and continued.
okay.
So that's what we're dealing with.
And I can confirm that the legal lawsuit relating to the injunction was framed as though Pat King is part of the Freedom Convoy. And I confirmed in writing to the personal injury lawyer, and I made representations directly to the court to confirm that Pat King, that these folks and the Freedom Convoy have no affiliation with Mr. King whatsoever. And as has been pointed out, we do have freedom of speech. We have many people in many forums claiming to be spokespeople and representatives. These are the spokespeople and
Yeah,
representatives.
well, that's one of the problems. I mean, some response feedback I'm getting from people who are here protesting, support you guys. They're struck by the fact that there isn't very clear communication coming from the organizers, so I didn't even know you had a PR person for today. And so some of what I've been hearing is that you should have a very clear message and frequent interactions. Whether I know you don't trust the media, but just tweet about it, make it very clear where you're coming from. And so this is coming from your own supporters. They're saying that the communication has to be very clear.
Just one thing we are doing is putting out a daily intelligence report as well as individual warnings on a specific event or a specific or something like that.
Where is this?
If one way to track it down, an easy way to find it would be to go to Twitter @TomTsec, @TOMTSEC. That's me. That's my Twitter account. Every time we create a new special report, I put it on there, and it's got a Google Drive link. So when you hit the Google Drive link, you will find not only the report I'm talking about, but all of the other intelligence reports and special warning reports that are there. And we're letting those out. We started the last few days, they're getting out to the truckers, and now we're going to start getting them out to the media. So if you're curious about issues, events, what our views are, special events, that kind of stuff. So over the next couple of days, we're going to have one special report out on Chief Stoley, which will point out a bit of his background and how we feel about what he's doing good and perhaps not so good. We're going to have, weirdly enough, a report on spirituality. We have discovered that within the ranks of the people supporting us, there is a huge craving, a huge desire to see some sort of moral compass back in government again. The government has driven faith out of society, which is perhaps it's right, I don't know. But what we're seeing is people are longing for some sort of moral compass, some sort of set of values, some sort of virtue in government, because government right now is seen as, unaccountable, irresponsible. Yeah, people just don't trust it anymore. So there's this awakening moving through the movement as well, which is quite startling. So we'll have something out on that. We're going to have a couple more coming out on why Justin Trudeau refuses to negotiate with us. And our suggestion is it's a lot more to do with just mandates. It's to do with his entire global project. But anyway, @TomTsec on Twitter, follow that Twitter account, and you'll see all our special intelligence reports coming up on a daily or twice-a-day basis.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you just said, that this is not just about the mandates. I'm speaking to a few truckers, and everyone has their own view. Some are, but all of them are united in opposing the mandates. A few feel that they're not going to go anywhere till Justin Trudeau resigns. And I've tried to engage with them, and I've said, look, for democracy here, we have to follow the rule of law. There's a democratic process in place. We have elections, et cetera, et cetera. But I've encountered this more than a few times where they say that they're not going to go anywhere till Justin Trudeau resigns. And what is your take on that? I mean, I know last weekend you said that it is all about the mandates. You just want all mandates dropped. Is that still the case?
Yeah, that's still the case. I mean, you're going to find I have friends in trucking who are the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would love Justin Trudeau to resign, but what I see now, this is why Candace taking over leadership of the Conservative Party, Pierre deciding he's going to run kind of gives them hope. I don't think it's all that difficult to sell, I know to my friends that, we want him to resign. We got to be practical. We got what we want. And the next thing is the upcoming election. And given what's happened here, I don't know how Trudeau remains in office, really. And I think most people realize that. The other thing I just wanted to double back when you said, we don't trust the media. We do. That's why you're here.
I should clarify, I'm just here on my own.
No, but you're
I'm coming as my own person. You're not representing anybody because
But
I'm a freelancer, so.
But you're an independent freelancer. You're fair and you're objective. And we're not sitting here like that other news conference that happened, calling us names and trying to rabble-rise.
So would you be open to the idea of actually sitting down with a mainstream media person, CTV, CBC, and having a conversation with them?
That's something we'll consider over time. Right now, it doesn't seem like we need it. And this is an opportunity for independent media to shine. One of the problems, or a couple of problems I've mentioned in the past with mainstream media is they'll come in here, there'll be 5 of them, they'll bully everybody, their equipment is huge, they'll talk over everybody. It's like it's the 1929 crash. Everybody wants to take the scoop, right? That's how they behave. Whereas, look at this, we're calm, there's no time constraints, we're respecting everybody. That's just not an environment that I think is conducive to what we want. And then we know, their primary tactic is lie by omission. So we're going to sit and do an interview with them, but we know it's going to be deceptively edited. So what's the point? And then at the same time, they're going to have nowhere near the amount of reach in terms of views than you guys will, right? Because the nature of media has changed. And I think this particular event is a pivotal moment for global media, where independent media starts to go on that journey to usurp all corporate media. And I think that's why they're behaving so maliciously towards us.
Well, one interesting comment a lot of comments I've been getting from American journalists, many of them are actually Canadian. They pointed something very interesting to me. Why is there no eyewitness coverage of this movement? What is going on? All I keep hearing are these are a bunch of white supremacists, but then I see these videos of people dancing and singing, and there are these placards of love and unity and peace. What is going on? And these are journalists, New York Times, NBC News. They're perplexed why mainstream media here hasn't.
That's an excellent question. And actually, a relative of mine from Edmonton texted me yesterday, and she was very concerned. How's everything going? Are you okay down there? And I'm like, we're great. Like, this is like Canada Day on steroids here, right? So, but what they're seeing back home and what they're hearing from the mainstream media is very disappointing. I mean, we're out there, I'm hugging babies, and little children are giving me cards, thank you cards, right? A lady today gave me a bag of socks to give out to the truckers, and she had a picture on it that they had done, and a quote from her 10-year-old son thanking the truckers. This is what's happening out there for real. We're not here causing problems. Our people are not being aggressive. We've said right from the start, if you see people that are being aggressive, report it. Get their license plate. Contact us and let us report it, because that's not us and that's not who we are. And we've never come here with an agenda to be violent or aggressive or threatening. We come here with a simple message. Let's end the mandates. Let's get our people all back to work. Let people open up their businesses. Let children have birthday parties. I ran into some kids in the elevator, and they were talking about the swimming pool. And the swimming pool is empty. These are our children that are begging for us to help save their futures. Right? They're the ones holding up the signs. Thank you, truckers, for saving our freedoms. This is what it's all about. And then you have the mainstream media upsetting my family who thinks I'm in danger. Right? But you guys have been down there and you see what's going on. This is about love. This is about unity, and it's about coming together. And this is what we're seeing on the ground.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to monopolize your time here with all these questions, but I've been partly overseas, and I've been in this country for more than 20 years. I've seen it change quite a bit. I'm really struck by the fact that, and wondering if any one of you can answer this. I've seen elected officials threaten the protesters and say, we're going to identify you and take away your government aid. We'll come after you. We'll take away this money that you've raised. What's happened to Canada? Why are some officials here sounding like tin pot dictatorships? What has happened? I'm trying to figure this out. But,
Also, what you've noticed is, we set up a soup kitchen. We've been cleaning up the streets,
right,
working with the homeless.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Not one Ottawa politician has been down there helping. So they go on their little Zoom calls and call everybody names while we're out there working with the homeless because they've been negligent in their duties.
Well, I know this homeless guy on my street, and I'm surrounded by different shelters.
Mm-hmm.
And I was walking home at 1 a.m. last night, and he said, I hope the truckers never go away.
Part of the mayor's strategy is to starve us out. You'll notice like the malls are closed, all the small businesses are closed, and it's an absolute sin because after 2 years of abuse from the government, lockdowns, shutdowns, you can only walk one way in the grocery aisle and all that stuff. All of a sudden now Ottawa is flooded with people. It's just overflowing on the weekend. All of these small businesses could be cashing in like crazy, making huge amounts of money. But because we're suffering from collective punishment being directed by Mayor Watson, they too must suffer. And as you know, now they tried closing part of the Redo Center subway access, the thing, and that's where the homeless guys were hanging out. And now they, kicked them out of there. So yeah, we're seeing people talk about, the homeless are suffering this and that. It's like, well, we're out there, we're feeding them, we're doing stuff for them. But if the mayor is going to subject legal protesters who are here to demand freedom to collective punishment because he doesn't like it, and if he's going to subject small business to collective punishment because he doesn't like it, I think he's going to find himself in legal trouble and political trouble in the next little while. If they tried that crap in prison, that one prisoner acted like an idiot and they locked down the whole prison and started starving them, human rights people would be all over that in a heartbeat.
There's a move to forcible the police or officials make a move to forcibly start removing the trucks here. What would it look like? How would they? Do you guys have any idea of what that would?
The only forces in the country that could forcibly do that, and here we're treading on very thin ice. I'm ex-military. Just some of the people helping out in the convoy are ex-military. The only forces would be civic forces, which is to say tow truck companies that would have the physical capability to take these trucks out of here. I think we made it fairly clear those guys are walking away. It's too hard. The other force is the military, which has engineering vehicles that can do that kind of work. I don't see that happening. With the possible exception of, I'm on thin ice here, but the possible exception of the Prime Minister, I don't see any politician in the country dumb enough to turn the military.
So there's we see on the ground,
citizens.
We see on the ground how peaceful it is, right? And it may sound extreme. We have no concern at all about them using military action.
You can never say never, especially with a prime minister who has a history of sort of totalitarian centralization. He's a big part of the globalist movement, etc. But I mean, our defense minister came out when the prime minister was talking about this, and the chief of police was talking about it. The defense minister came out and said, "No happening." And I think that's the thing. There's no mission here for the military. There's no aid to the civil power mission because the city's not suffering that way. If anybody's suffering, it's the truck drivers, not the civilian population. The only way they could do it was War Measures Act, and that is a response to a war or to internal violence. And if you recall correctly, we've had 2 War Measures Acts, one by a guy named Pierre Trudeau, which was, but in fairness to Pierre Trudeau, that was aimed at a terrorist force. And that was to maintain control of certain areas to bring the bombings down while the police went after the terrorists and got rid of them. The other one was the Oka crisis, which was an entirely different situation at that point. There is no violence here. There is no insurrection. There's no threat to the civil power. So there is no role for the military. Also, it would be curious to know, it would be interesting to know the military itself, where it would go.
I just add that from having traveled extensively through the downtown core and the Parliament block for a number of days now, when I first arrived, I thought we would get stopped several blocks away because you couldn't move and I'd end up walking. any taxi I've been in or anybody who's given me a ride has picked me up right in front of the hotel and taken me to another hotel, just like when I was in Ottawa 3 years ago. This notion that there's somehow a restriction, and there are little side blocks in between other blocks where they are fully blocked off, but you just go one block up and do your left turn and you're good to go. So this notion that somehow there's a siege here, I really encourage people to come down and see for themselves. Because, what we see on the legacy media has no correlation whatsoever to what's happening on the ground here.
The blockade I've seen, I experienced today when I go up to Parliament Hill. These
blockades I've encountered is blockades blocking off several vehicles, roads for reasons I don't understand.
Yes, there was I read an article about the chief health officer, suggesting that it's time to examine the vaccine passport, looking at possibility of going back to normalcy. Do you think that has to do, this is chief health officer announced that, we no longer need this kind of, vaccine passport, all these kind of measures.
Well, I think
but that has nothing to do with the.
Yeah, nothing to do with truckers.
No.
Hashtag nothing to do with truckers. I think our movement here, I guess you'd call it the initial convoy, but now they're seeing all these other convoys of people who are getting inspired, getting their communities together. You see what's happening in the Alberta border, but we don't actually have anything to do with it. There's another convoy in Vancouver, I think the BC area. So people are rightfully fed up all over the country. And I think it's more than just us. They're seeing that there's a wave of the general population that wants exactly that. That's just fed up and wants life to go back to normal. And ultimately, with our system of government, they're going to have no choice, that they'll have to do something to go back to some sense of normalcy. I think it's just a matter of time for them to figure out what's the messaging strategy, because political parties always do that. We gotta control the messaging, right? But once they figure out the messaging that works for them, and they know that if they just meet the basic requirements of all of these truckers who don't want the passports and the mandates, it's the easiest, shot to score on the net. It's simple for them, and I think they'll do that. It's just a matter of time.
We've seen throughout this pandemic, it's almost like a cycle. There's reopenings, and every time there's a new variant, we see lots of harsh restrictions return. If you do get what you want, and the mandates are dropping your leave, and the government decides to reimpose these mandates because of a new variant, would you be willing to come back to Ottawa to pressure them again?
Of course.
I think you would see that happen in short order.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I mean, one thing's for sure. I don't think you would accuse any of these truckers of trusting the government, right? So when they say they're going to remove the mandates and remove the passports and all mandates, the convoys are going to start making their way back home, but they might not be going so quickly. They may take their time just to see that everything is going to the way the government promises. But I think once the government makes that promise, if they try to reverse, they're done. They have zero legitimacy and credibility, even amongst their own base, because you can't, one day it's this, one day it's another. Look what it did to Trudeau's reputation when they were doing that, or Doug Ford's reputation, right? Their base of support started to turn on them because one day to the other it changed, and that's a big part of what's angered some people, right?
Speaking of bases of support, we're being accused of being a fringe minority by the Prime Minister. So I have a master's degree in political science, which I accidentally got at one point in my life. So just for fun, let's say there's the list in Canada put forward by Elections Canada of every registered voter in Canada. That's 100%. Now, in the last election that was just held last fall, Justin Trudeau got 20% of all registered voters to vote for him. And I think it was actually 20 point something or 21 point something. But it was 20% of all registered voters voted for Justin Trudeau. The other 80% either didn't vote at all or didn't vote for Justin Trudeau. So to be perfectly clear, the fringe minority is the Liberal Party of Canada that speaks on behalf of its 20% mandate. The other 80% of the country isn't represented by the voice of Mr. Trudeau. He is the fringe minority. The rest of us are the majority.
Do you have a message for any citizens in Ottawa that are currently upset with the current situation, with the noise, the honking? There seems to be a lot of mainstream media outlets reporting on that, saying that citizens in Ottawa are upset. Do you have a message for those people?
I personally haven't encountered them. I saw one or two videos that went viral, and it looked like somebody from the Justin Trudeau acting school. But to anybody who is annoyed, we apologize. Please call Justin Trudeau's office and get these mandates lifted, and we're out of here.
Here's another message as well. People across the country are losing their jobs, they're losing their homes, they're losing their businesses, they're losing their trucks, by the way.
Right.
They have suffered for the last 2 years under a series of arbitrary and capricious measures which advance and then they retreat. So everybody thinks it's time to get back into business. I know a restaurant owner here bought a whole crap load of food for one weekend. Friday, they close the restaurants for the weekend and he loses several $1,000s worth of food. So I know there's a lot of people complaining, but let's remember most of Ottawa's government, huge number of civil servants here. They haven't missed a paycheck.
Yeah.
They've got pay raises. Some of them have got back pay. Most of them are working from home. Some of them who can't work from home are just doing nothing and still getting paid. So yes, it's unfortunate that they feel bad about the horns. Yes, it's unfortunate they feel bad about the disruption, but the rest of the country is hurting.
Yes.
Can I comment on that? Yes, I understand it is annoying for some. My own children who love hockey told me within the last 2 days, my oldest daughter, she's a great hockey player, my son who loves it, they both told me that they don't even want to play hockey in our hometown anymore because of how isolated and alienated they feel because of the position that we have taken on this issue. So the people dealing with the honking, they're not the only ones that are dealing with the impact of all of these mandates.
Would you say that, to put it concisely, the objective is just restoring the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms for all Canadians? And then a follow-up to that is, if that gets met, if that objective is met, just your thoughts on how do we keep them accountable to continuing to honor that? Are there any fail-safes that we should have had that we didn't have that can be suggested to make sure? And my feeling is one of them, we all, as Canadians, every citizen has to be familiar with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and what the sections are. It's my little cousin can understand it and read it. So we should probably all be familiar. So is that the objective? And is there anything, just thoughts, ideas of how we can hold our politicians accountable for actually honoring that commitment if it's made and we can all go home and get back to work?
Good question. Difficult to answer. What we're hoping, we've discussed this privately, is that there will be momentum from here. People have felt, we all know this, people have felt very demoralized for the past several years. We've all been called names because we want freedom, we don't want identity politics, we don't want division, therefore we are racist. That's what we've been dealing with. And just before this news conference, we're getting thousands of messages. Got a message from a woman who is a single mother, 2 kids, and she said for the past 2 years, she just didn't want to live anymore. She was suffering depression, and her children were depressed, and she was done. And she saw this, and she said, "You've given me hope in my life." And she came to Ottawa. She's not from Ottawa, and she brought her children, and her little voice says, "Mommy, the truckers are going to free us, and we're going to have our lives back." We have heard that thousands of times, and it's really difficult. But it's amazing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with social unrest movements, G7, G8, G20, Summit of the Americas, President Bush visits, that sort of thing. I was also a security and operational risk manager for a G10 central bank, and we did a lot of look at social unrest movements in Europe. So to directly answer your question, what can we do to guarantee that the politicians will stay on the line? I don't actually have an answer for you. I don't know how we do that. What I can tell you is that what I saw in Europe when I went to riots in Athens and places like that to see what was going on is they have a method over there of getting their politicians to pay attention more so than we do. A couple 100,000 people show up at the town square and say, we're going to burn the place down if you guys don't fix this. So what we're seeing here in Canada, I hope, is the start of a movement which is going to go national, where the politicians are going to have to start looking over their shoulders and say, well, if we do this, what are those guys going to do? If the people fear the government, that's called tyranny. If the government fears the people, that's called liberty. And I think in Canada, we are seeing the start of an awakening where people are going to start reacting. So right now, I mean, the Alberta crossing just had 3 times, like there's a huge pylon yesterday. They've now increased the number of vehicles there by about 300%. The Sarnia crossing was just closed. Toronto's having problems, Quebec's having problems, Ottawa's having problems. And I think what we're going to see is people are just going to start going to the government and saying, no, get this fixed. And if you don't, we're realizing that we have the power to shut things down. I suspect that the government will be resistant to that message for some time to come because they live in their own little Ottawa bubble. Most people don't realize that Canada for Ottawa is only 20 kilometers wide. There's 10 kilometers east of Parliament Hill and there's 10 kilometers west of Parliament Hill. And that's Canada to those guys. They have no clue what's going on in the rest of the country. But I think we've brought the message to Ottawa now that the kinetic people, the people that work, live, move, deal in terms of horsepower, weight, fuel, that sort of stuff, farmers, truckers, those people are bringing the message to Ottawa, and now that message is amplifying across the land. So I think there's a start of a pushback. I think it's a real movement, and I think over term, it's going to rattle the politicians, which frankly, in a democratic society, is a good thing.
I have a question regarding some of the accusations that some, even in the, on the right, people have accused you of not following law and order and that blocking the roads is against law. Maybe we can get a legal opinion on this too. Do you think that laws are being broken by the convoy protesters? And if yes, do you think that there may be justification for that, or in that sense?
All Canadians have the right under Section 2 of the Charter for free expression and assembly. And under Section 52 of the Constitution Act, the Charter is the supreme law of Canada. It overrides any municipal bylaw. So our position is that the truckers are exercising their constitutional rights in an effort to get the ones that have been taken restored.
What do you say to some people who say this is illegal? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really understand the.
It's not.
This protest is illegal. That you didn't have the permission to be here. And what do you say to that?
I'd say the same thing I just said.
Yeah.
But understand, I can't speak to every detailed fact situation.
Right.
I'm speaking generally that all Canadians have the right, as set out under the Charter, and if a federal law, a provincial law, or a municipal bylaw interferes with those rights, it's of no force and effect because it violates the Charter.
We've seen pastors in Alberta be locked up for not complying with COVID rules. Do you think that there is a way that these organizers